Hey everybody, Chris Lindsay here, and you're listening to Pitch List. We want to discover what makes creative people tick. Join us as we explore what it means to be a writer, and more importantly, what it means to be a person. Remember why you love music, and welcome to Pitch List. The first time I met today's guest, she was screaming her head off for Ben Burgess as he performed his song at the Ryman Theater for the NSAI Awards. It was so loud that I almost jumped out of my seat. I asked Amy, "Who the hell is that?" And she said, "Jessie Joe Dillon." And I have been a fan ever since. She has the kind of raw passion and unapologetic engagement in life that makes a great songwriter. Along the way, she has written songs for Luke Bryan, John Party, Brett Eldredge, Tim McGraw, Brandy Clark, and one of my personal favorites in a long time, Break Up in the End, for Cole Swindell. She is an absolute pleasure to talk to, and I get the feeling that she will be running this town pretty soon. Here's Jessie Joe Dillon. Good afternoon. We've got another great guest today on Pitch List. I am really excited about this one. Really excited. This is.
Thank you, Chris.
Hey, I'm telling you, we've been talking about it for a couple weeks, and I've been excited to talk to you. This is Jessie Joe Dillon.
Hey guys, I'm so excited to talk to you. I know Amy knows this because I'm such a fan of her, but I'm such a fan of you.
Oh, thank you.
And you guys together. So it just feels really dope that you wanted to ask me to come on. I'm excited.
Well, we've been following you for a while, and it's just so great to watch, and really just to see you at the events and see, I know, it's a small town, and what a great person you are. And, I think Amy really feels a connection to you because you both had songwriting dads.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? And,
yeah.
I think she feels that bond with you.
Yes. So there's like a kinship there.
There is a kinship there. I think that's a unique situation. But we're here to talk about you. So I want to talk about you.
I say me and Amy and like TR, there's a couple of us that you
that's
just feel
right.
like, I see you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you grow up in Nashville or outside of Nashville? I know it said Tennessee.
Yes. I grew up outside of Nashville in Williamson County, but much like it was for you guys, I'm sure what Brentwood is now is not really what I grew up in. We had 9 acres, and it was more it just wasn't so developed.
Right.
And then, born and raised in Nashville. And then I spent a ton of time with my dad in East Tennessee because he's from an hour outside of Knoxville. So I spent a lot of summers with his family. And I don't know, I feel like it was a great experience with those folks. I love it. It's like I'm part hillbilly because of it, Yeah.
Yeah. So now, did you live in LA also?
I lived in LA for a year after high school. And I don't know if you felt like this, but I wanted to get away from my hometown. And it's weird to be from a place that you kind of feel like if I'm going to do what I want to do, I'm going to end up back there. So I felt like I grew up a lot living in LA, and I was basically trying to do anything but want to be a songwriter because I knew I wanted to be one. I don't know if Amy went through this too, but I was so nervous because of my dad being almost larger than life on
right.
Music Row. I just thought, come on, dude, can you want to do anything else? And so I spent time out there, and then the town pulled me back, so to speak.
Yeah. But everybody wants to have their own thing. You want to have your own thing.
Totally. And I think it's just weird being someone's kid because I've talked to Derek Wells a lot about this too, just having, he's such a great guitar player, but having a stepdad that was a great guitar player and his real dad a great guitar player. He was I would hide in my room to play guitar, and one of them would knock on the door and be like, "What are you doing, bud?" Nothing. Basically throw the guitar away because you're just so I don't know. I've always super fucking sympathized too I can't imagine what it would be like to be someone like John Lennon's son, like Sean Lennon, or it's
agreed.
Just a lot.
We were, my teenage boys are huge Beatles and John Lennon fans. And we were talking about that the other night about how bad that has to be. I mean, just you to really never get out of the underneath the shadow of John and someone like John Lennon, you know.
I know, and it's like you love them so much for that. And so it's this weird feeling where it can almost make you feel shitty to even feel like weird towards your parent. Not necessarily weird. I don't even know what the word is, but you know what I mean.
I do. And I think it's also different. It'd be a different thing having your dad be in the Beatles.
I know. Or if your dad, Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. That's another
Dylan,
one. Yeah.
I mean, he's done such dope music on his own, but I imagine that he would be saying the same stuff we're saying, I'm sure, you know?
Absolutely. So let's get back to your story. So you went out to LA for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ended up coming back here.
Yes.
And you did you sign at Big Machine? Was that your first full-on publishing deal?
No, so I've had 3 deals. My first deal was with a really small company, and it was called Anchor Down. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I was like, Robin Palmer was there plugging, who I feel like was so instrumental in introducing me to people like Shane McAnally and Brandy Clark. Like, the owner of our company was kind of confusing sometimes, but I felt very blessed that I got to know Robin and that she has such a gift for putting writers together. And so I really feel like there was the start of, I don't know, finding somewhat of my own little corner, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you are now with Big Machine.
Yes. Now I had another deal in between Anchor Down and Big Machine, and Mike, even Molinar, who's head of Big Machine, and Alex Heddle always liked my music and would hear my music. And even in my old deal, you know, when I was like coming up, they would always just say like, hey, if you ever, not in a weird way, but like, we'd love to work with you sometime. And it just so happened that it ended up working out. Now we're all together and it's awesome.
Oh, that's great.
I love them so much.
Yeah. Now, I love to ask writers this. Do you write like daily, or do you work 5 days a week at it, or are you a 3-day-a-week person? Or
normally I have been a 4 to 5 day a week. Know this year, I will say I have written more like 3 days, and I honestly don't know if I'll go back to the other way. Yeah. I feel like it's important to fill the well back up, as like Hemingway would say, because I think, and it's such a town of a grind as much as it is just like natural talent, where you can get real caught up in like FOMO of like, oh, well, if I'm not writing 5 days a week or 2 times a day, like what is so-and-so doing? And not even just in a jealous way, just more of like thinking like, am I working as hard as I should be? It's a demon.
It is. It really is. And then jealousy is the thief of joy. That's another one of my favorite quotes.
Oh, it truly, truly, truly is.
You know, it's like being upset or thinking you're missing out or jealousy or all that stuff, which are natural human feelings.
Right.
But they impede your ability to write too, you know?
I completely agree. And I think too, like, I mean, I feel like we've all seen that classic picture of the guy of Michael Phelps at the Olympics, where that one guy was beating him and he looked over to see where Michael Phelps was. And because of that move, he lost to him.
Right.
I think that picture is such an incredible picture, and because it's the truth, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think each of our journeys is so different, and it's really easy to look at like our co-writers or co-workers, because it's a weird business in that way. Like, we're friends with our competitors almost, because do you know what I mean? Like, no, absolutely. You get all these like close relationships with people, but technically we're sort of competing for chart cuts with them in this strange way. So it's this weird finding this balance of like, hey man, it's okay to be happy for people, and it's okay to not get every single freaking thing. Like,
yeah.
I think we all are like trying to figure that out as we go, I guess. But
yeah, I think it's a balance. For me personally, just have done it a long time. I give myself a few minutes to be angry and mad.
Yes.
Or a good 15 minutes to be pissed off at somebody that I'd love. And then I have to make myself remember that I love them and that I'm going to be happy for them. And I've had plenty of times where I've had great things happen where they didn't.
Absolutely. And
that's like how I handle it.
And it's so right on because it is true. I'm glad you said that because I do think it's important to give yourself a minute to be upset.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've felt like business people will want us to, it's pick your head up. It's fine. And it's like, man, some of this stuff stings though.
Yes,
like,
it does.
Awards nominations, any of that shit. Like it feels like you take an arrow on the battlefield and you just need a minute to pull yourself back up, you know?
And you know what else? I don't think someone would be that good if they weren't competitive a little bit.
Right.
And you know what I mean? I mean, it is, getting charting songs and getting number ones and top fives. It's a tough gig and people are competitive.
They are. And I think for a lot of us as creators too, like we fall in love with so many of our songs that it hurts in this real visceral way. If they get like knocked off a record, you're like, but I love that song. I want it to be out there, And so I don't know, man, it's balance. Like you said, truly.
Especially if it's your friend, then you're going to be like, hey man, I'm going to go give them a hug. Good for them. There's plenty to go around.
Deep down, you are happy for them.
Right.
I think
exactly right.
It's this weird thing that gets in your head. That's like more about yourself than it even is them. Like, am I working hard? The FOMO, really.
I've always thought of it this way. It's like the 3-year-old in all of us.
Yes.
I have a bunch. When my kids were all little, I used to make a joke and they were all within 2 years of each other. When they were little, I used to make a joke. I could give one of them a cat turd, and the other 3 would be like, "Where's my cat turd?"
Exactly, dude. That is so what it is.
And that's what it is.
So what it is.
It's a 3-year-old in all of us who's like, "Where's my Tim McGraw cut?"
I know exactly. Exactly. I completely agree with that.
But Marv Green. I'm
Love
sure you know
him.
Marv. Yeah, Marv had a way of looking at it too. I thought was great. He took it a step further and he said, "Well, if the guys across the hall got a Tim McGraw cut, that means I can too."
Yep.
That means they're happening. They're happening right here.
Totally. That's like in my right today. Like we were talking about this kind of stuff too. And I was like, our job is like a casino a lot, meaning almost like if you sit down at the table long enough and play your heart out, you're going to hit, I think at some point. It's just then other things start to come into play of like your work ethic, your talent, etc. But it's that grind, it's just so, it is what it is. Marv's so right. It's like the silver lining. If they can do that, I can too.
Right. When it's striking around you, you're like, well, shit, it could hit, but.
I know. Yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. I've got some notes here and I got to ask you a couple things. Okay. Number one, break up in the end. Okay. I know you've heard this. I know you've heard it until you want to throw up, but I got to tell you, that is an amazing song. One of my favorite songs in the last several years.
Gosh, thank you.
I flipping love, and everybody does. I know the fans did, everybody did, but I just want to tell you that is such a great song.
Chris, that means so much to me. I mean, and you get this too. Like, it feels really good to have someone you respect say it about one you love too. Like one you're really proud of.
Yes.
It feels so cool to have your peers and fans simultaneously be like, man, that's great. It just feels good.
It is such a great song. It is such a great song and a great performance, everything. I was doing a little research on it and I wanted to ask you a question. So in some article that I read, it said that you had read a book called John Dies at the End. Is that correct?
No, I had seen it in the library. Okay.
Are you a big reader?
Yes.
That was my question. That's where I wanted to go.
Yes, I love
it. I think that's important.
I think, gosh, I mean, I don't mean to sound shitty, but I think if you ain't reading and you're trying to write, you need to start.
Yes.
Truly, especially if you care about being a lyricist at all or lyrical, I mean, their books are ginormously long songs with no music to me, I mean, there's so much. And I don't know about you, but I'm such a fan not only of music and books and things, but of their creators. And when I start reading these authors like a Hemingway, or speaking of you saying how much do you write, I'll never forget being like 22 and reading that Ernest Hemingway wrote every day. And I don't know, in my head, I did not imagine that. In my mind, I was like, he just writes whenever the mood strikes him, he's so magical. And it was like, no, it was a work for someone like that. And And those guys were always like, read. If you're not reading, you're missing out. So I would suggest to anyone listening to this, if you're not reading, read.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go with it, because I know we do a podcast on songwriting and it doesn't come up as much as it should. Reading is critical for lyrics, right? It is critical.
It is critical. It's especially to get you out of your own world a little bit too. Like, because then it could evoke something in your own world that makes you think of a song you want to write, or like, or a way you want to say something, or subject matter. I don't know. It's just, I think it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah. And it's so true. And I just wanted to put it out there in the world. You know, you should be reading, and, you know, keep a notebook, and you'll see things, you know, or circle them in the book, or write them down, or however you do it. But you can get great ideas, and not just title ideas, but just like anything, perspective ideas.
I know, like
anything, thoughts.
Even,
yes.
You know, like totally. I mean, because just, God, so many people have said things so beautifully. I was thinking it the other day when I was reading something of Stephen King, who I feel like notoriously gets known as this like horror writer, but man, the guy says
he's so amazing,
many poignant things about life, just even in passing small dialogue that you'll think, well, you have to almost like read it again, because it was so simple, but you're like, man, that is so true. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's just absolutely necessary.
I love Stephen King, and I
Me
think
too.
he's well, clearly he's probably the best-selling author of our time. But there's some literary shitheads who maybe look down on him a little bit, and I think they're wrong if they do, because he's an unfucking believable writer. And you know, there's a book he has called On Writing. Have you read?
Yes.
That is the best book on like writing fiction, but it applies to songwriting too. I would
totally,
say
because it's all the same to me.
It's
like
all the same.
It really is, and I know what you mean about him and the critical snobby people, because I feel like in On Writing you could feel it, which weirdly I would love to, Stephen King, if you ever hear this podcast, thank you for being vulnerable enough to talk about that. Because as a person to know, a regular just low totem pole person to know that someone like Stephen King still gets their feelings hurt, like weirdly it brings like solace to me of like, okay, that's a guy who has written a billion things I'd love to have written. And, and he still can get a chip on his shoulder or get his feelings hurt by people. And I think it's important to remember that someone like that's human, as genius as he is, you know?
Yeah. And it's so weird, man. There's just this thing of certain type of people, the intelligentsia, who just have decided maybe that it can't be good if it sells a lot. Which is fucking crazy. The Beatles are the best band I think ever, and they sold a lot.
Right. You know? I agree. I think that's total bullshit.
I do too.
I hate that, because I feel like it's another like divisive thing that happens in like the creative communities, whether it's fucking art, literally paintings, books, or music. I feel like there's been this forever, like someone's critically acclaimed and someone's top 40. And I'm like, well, why can't some of them merge some of the time? You know, I think that's ridiculous too. I think it's bullshit. I think just because something's popular doesn't necessarily mean it's not intelligent. Because that's almost like what they're saying.
It is what,
They wouldn't like to hear that it said this way, but that's truly what they're saying.
Well, and I think underneath it, there's this even nastier little thought, which is, if too many people like this, I can't like it because I'm cooler than everybody else.
Totally. Exactly. Gosh, that reminds me of too with country and like Americana. It's what will always like make me bummed out about, because so much of it feels like from the same root, both of these genres, you know? And I feel like it can always turn into this conversation of that, of like, well, this is the dumb stuff on the radio and then this is the smart stuff. And I'm like, that's not always the case either way. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
You know?
Yes, it's not always true.
No. On either side of that, I'm just like, just because someone's indie doesn't mean that they're smarter than other people. And then just because someone's top 40 doesn't mean that they're dumber. I don't know. It's an interesting issue.
But I think one good thing that's happening through the streaming revolution, I think that it's making things more democratic.
I think that's what is so hard for me about it is like I was coming of age during like Napster times, which we all know Napster was bad. It was like stealing music. Fuck you, guy that invented that for not paying any of us. But I always listened to everything from like hip hop to country to classic rock to weird indie singer-songwriters, you know, to the Backstreet Boys. And I think it's all really good and it all has its mood, you know, and I think you're right that because of streaming is now like our own little burned CDs we all used to do. And so I feel like it's opening, the technology is great in that way that it's opening the door for more people to discover music, whether it's on the radio, off the radio, whatever. And then it's almost becoming like, let the people decide what's good instead of whatever else. Because, you know, I don't know if you can fake streaming numbers. Maybe you can. As humans, I feel like we figure out how to manipulate everything, but I don't know.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you would want to believe in general those would be right, but I'm sure some.
I know, because I would think that. Like you know, it's like Morgan Wallen streams like crazy because he's great.
Right.
You know, I think that it becomes this easy thing to see about people, I guess.
And it's still interesting in country music. I see streaming numbers from people who aren't that big on country radio.
Yes.
And what's that about?
I know. And that's like today, this is going to be so embarrassing. Nobody hate me that's listening to this, but I've heard about this guy for a really long time. And I don't know if you feel like this, but I can be horrible about listening to new music. That goes back to growing up as a songwriter's kid too, real quick. My dad never wanted to listen to music in the car, ever, nothing. Unless like it was like Simple Man by Leonard Skinner or a James Taylor song. He was like not interested. And I used to be like, Dad, you're so boring. And now even getting into my early 30s, I'm like, oh, I totally get it. He was fried on like music, but Tyler Childers, circling back, I've heard such great things that he's a genius and he's been someone I've wanted to like sit down with his records and really listen to them all because I've heard such great things. And then this morning I saw he did this video speaking kind of to his fans about his new record and the state of the world. And I just loved everything the guy said. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to listen to him because he's one that I think streams like crazy. That's why I brought him up. But I've never heard him on like, you know, top 40 country or something, obviously. Yeah. But I loved everything that he was saying in his video so much that this weekend I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. Listen to a bunch of Tyler Childers records, you know?
Yeah. And there's a bunch of them. Who's that other guy? Sturgill Simpson. What's his name?
Oh, I love Sturgill Simpson.
I mean, he doesn't get much radio, does he?
No, he doesn't. And I mean, it's weird. That's the part about the business sometimes that I wish would figure itself out, radio versus acclaim somehow, because I remember the year he won Country Album of the Year, like I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I kind of was sitting there then at that point being like, why doesn't he get played on the radio at all? Like, I don't know. I miss the 90s, man, when it could just be more like different kinds of things, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is that even true? Because I wasn't in it in the 90s. So you might be like, no, it's always been this way.
Well, no, I came in the late 90s. So
That's what I thought.
So I kind of had my first radio thing in 99. The thing when I listen to radio now, what surprises me is it sounds very country.
I know what you mean. And I do feel like we're doing that thing that always happens where at least that's what my dad always says is he's like, this has always been this way where like we go so far in one direction and then it'll swing right back. Right. And I feel like we're seeing that currently where we got a little bit more away from the country-ishness and now it's like popular again, I guess.
It's, you know, it's 20 years later, but listening to the Luke Combs songs, and this is not a cut because I love this guy. It sounded like a Joe Diffie record.
Totally.
It sounds like a Joe Diffie record.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's better. It's better recorded. It's got some cooler loops. But I mean, it's essentially very much like a Joe Diffie record.
I don't know Luke super well, but I would think he would take that as a compliment because I think he gets a lot of, at least like things I've read that he's talked about his music like you're saying, like Joe Diffie, Garth Brooks, like that era is his inspiration. So I'm with you. It does sound like that.
But I'll tell you one thing, he's a hell of a singer, isn't he?
He totally is.
Holy shit,
he is a great singer. And my dad does this festival I feel like I've talked about him a lot on this. Usually I don't. It's funny. But he has this festival out in Colorado that it's kind of like a little writers festival he does. And Luke came and did it this last year. And I just remember being so struck by him because he got up to sing another song, to sing a song that he'd never sang. And he had to stop himself because he was like, guys, I'm sorry. He was getting super emotional.
Wow.
Genuinely. Like you could see like big crocodile tears forming because it was basically a song saying like, I'm sorry for all the shit I've put y'all through, but like kind of thanks for being there for me. I mean, obviously it was said way better than that, but that was the gist. And I just thought like, man, this guy's awesome. Like he's the real deal. He really believes in what he's singing. And I always think that's really cool to see, you know, on somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't go away. Pitch List will be right back after the break. Well, let's talk about, you've had so many good songs. I'm not going to go through each one, but I want to talk about your process. Like, do you go into a session like with titles or do you?
Yeah. When I don't, I feel like naked. It's my worst day already. Like if I don't have a title that I think that I feel pretty solid about, especially if it's with a big artist or like my people like Chase and John or something that I write with all the time that I always want to try to bring my best stuff. I always start with titles or even like you said, like thoughts, like from a book, like guys, I was reading this thing last night and it said blah, blah, blah. And I know that's like an older language, but like, what if that feeling we could put into this song? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's definitely my biggest thing. I feel like I always have to have a title and I get scared. Chase McGill and I write a lot together, and a couple times a year we'll because we're a very similar writer, and we'll be like, all right, we're writing a song from the top down today with no title, and we're just going to see what happens, just to like see what we come up with. And some of them have been cool. I mean, none of them have been cut. They're always usually more like singer-songwriter, I guess, but it's fun exercise, I guess.
It is a good exercise, but usually you're working off a title. You want to go in with a solid concept when you're going in.
I do. I think the people, too, that I usually end up working the best with, or I end up being able to help them say what they want to say in the best way or sing, I have a good concept or somebody else did. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like where it feels pretty flushed out. Because I don't know if you feel like this, but I think of songs like they're almost like I need to see a blueprint. It's almost like a house to me. If I don't know how I'm going to get to the second floor, I can start to kind of like panic, you know, because sometimes you'll have those ideas, you know, are great, but they're not fully figured out yet.
Yep.
And I've made mistakes bringing those into rights before. And then the idea totally gets away from itself. And it's one that I've thought like, man, I wish I had spent more time with that because I think we could have nailed it more, you know, but it is what it is.
But you sometimes you don't know. Sometimes that idea, you hit the right co-writer with that and they go, bam, and they take it exactly. So
that is so true. See,
you don't really ever know.
Paradox. I know you don't. Yeah. But like, if you're like, okay, I can see how how this would feel by chorus 3 if we took this little path. And I do think you're so right because we all know those rights too, where sometimes it's been you. When someone will be like, I have this title, I don't know what it means. And for some reason, your brain's like, oh, I totally know what that means. Mm-hmm. Or they do that for you. Like similarly, where you're like, I have this title, I don't know what to do with it. And your co-writer's like, come on, dude, you do blah, blah, blah. And then there you go. Right.
And that's the beauty of co-writing is that especially in good writing relationships where there's love and trust,
yes,
you know, then they can be like, no, don't do that.
Totally.
Or, you know.
I know.
It's really good to have
Which are the
partners.
most beautiful ones when you find that with people that you could say or play or sing the weirdest thing and they would kind of be like, what are you doing? But they would let you do it and it would help them get somewhere else too. You know, even if it's not the line, it might make somebody else think something that is the line, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's funny how it works, and it's always evolving too.
Is. It's a little mystery song.
It is a little mystery. It really is. I guess that's the beauty, and that's what keeps us coming back. Do you have a group of core group of writers you work with a lot?
I do, and I feel like weirdly too, it's getting that way with artists even. Like they're especially new ones, and I know you and Amy, same deal. It's like you start working with a new artist and you feel like, wow, like we really live in the same world. Like today I was writing with this guy, Connor Smith, who's new on Big Machine. And gosh, I don't even think Connor's 21. And I remember I was in a really, I've told him this story, but I was in a really bad mood the first day I was going to write with him. And I called my publisher and I was like, what am I going to have to talk with a 20-year-old about? I don't even know. I don't want to do this today. And then I get there and he's this little like breath of fresh air to me, like just had, this is terrible, but you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. We're like vampires. He was like, I just had my heart broken. I want to write this song. And he had this cool ass perspective. And like, it was like the song was just flowing out of him. And it was so inspiring to me. You know what I mean? Those days you don't want to go in or somebody new, like you were saying, like we get used to our core group and then somebody new's on the scene and some days you're like, ugh, I don't feel like speed dating today. But then you get there and they're awesome, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is showing up, man. Cause you never know. You never know that day. You never know the day that song's going to fall out of the sky. And if you're not there, you don't get it.
I know. It's so, and I feel like from all genres, when I watch like all the writers that we're all in awe of, like Keith Richards to Bruce Springsteen, you know, to Paul McCartney, I feel like they all say the same thing too. They're like, you just hope you're around when the muse shows up, you know, like, and you keep your antenna up, but
that's right. Yeah.
You just got to show up and create, I guess.
Yeah. Psychic vampire. That's good. Is that what you said?
Oh, I said we're like vampires. I feel like anytime a co-writer is going through a particularly hard times, you're like, God, I can't wait to write about this. Yeah. Like if someone's going through a breakup or something that's terrible, but we as writers, I feel like love that shit.
Of course we do, because we know there's gold in those hills.
I know. There's gold in the mine. Get in there now.
I remember, I'm trying to think of who it was, but it was an artist. And I think Marv Green and I were going to write with a guy, and the publisher called up and said, oh, he may not be coming. This is years ago. He's probably not coming because his wife's just hit him, is asking for a divorce. He's devastated. And we're like, send him over.
Yeah, please.
He's a total wreck. He can't even drive. We're like, well, we'll go get him.
That's exactly it. I love that story.
Because you're like, this guy's just going to bleed out on the page.
Oh, totally. You're like, we'll have a song in an hour.
Yeah. It's like, this guy's, it's like real. It's happening. It's all.
Totally.
We just need to get a tape recorder in the room.
I know. It's so true.
It's true.
So true. Very true.
It's true. Yeah. Yes. I guess I'm a horrible person for thinking that way, but
I know. I think we all do it almost subconsciously. It's fun because you can watch your co-writers in the room. Like if somebody randomly is like, yeah, me and her aren't doing too well. Your other co-writer, if it's three of you, you can watch them just be like, huh? Tell us more about that. You know what I mean? It's so funny.
Tell us about your pain.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Lord knows I've been that person too. That everybody.
Yeah, me too, man.
You know,
I had a terrible.
On the other side of it, where you're the sad one, you're like, I hate all of you for this, but let's write about it.
I had a period of probably 8 to 12 months where I was going through a divorce. My life was just upside down. I would go down to the DreamWorks basement and just cry and write all night long. And I'm telling you,
I love that at the same time.
But that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I wrote like 5 or 6 songs that were hits.
That's incredible.
Right there. And it was because I was completely ripped off the earth and just floating.
I know. God, I love the way you just said that. That's so true too. Ripped off the earth and just floating. That needs to be in a song.
It's a high price to pay. And I don't think you'd want to be there for it, but it definitely, those times in your life, they do, it it makes things happen artistically. For sure.
It really does. I think and I think if that's something too that comes natural to you, it's hard when there's good times. I mean, I remember reading an article that Sam Hunt did not that long ago, and he talked about Montevallo, that first record of his, and he was like, I was devastated because at the time, she's now his wife, but I had lost her. And so I was writing all these songs for her, and he was like, and now I don't really know what to talk about because I'm not sad. And I definitely have, I don't know if you felt like this, but I definitely am more of I have an Eeyore kind of natural tendency. So when I'm sad, songs seem to flow sometimes much easier than when I'm happy. And then it is like, that's where reading and all these other things can come in to like inspire you.
I think I've talked to another guest about it recently. I think we all we want to write more when we're sad, you know?
Oh, yes.
And Sam Hunt, I think is it Montevallo? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay. Just one man's opinion. I think it's a watershed country moment.
Oh, me too. I think it'll always be played and remembered too. Yeah, I think it's you know, and you've seen them too. I feel like sometimes you can feel the records that you're like, even as an outsider that doesn't have cuts on it, just as a fan and being in the business, you're like, now that record's going to be around for a long time. I feel that way about like, it's fun to say this too because my boyfriend wrote it. His name's Ben Burgess, but I feel that way about Morgan Wallen and Whiskey Glasses. Like I think that'll always be a huge song for Morgan, like in his career, meaning like it, you know, because when he's touring, when he's a lot older, I think people will still know and sing that song. And not every release is like that. You know, I've had a lot of songs come out that I've thought, people like this right now. I wonder if they'll like it 5 years from now. And then you have some songs come out that you're like, or you're like you and you have Amazed come out and it's BMI Song of the Year 2 years in a row, right? I mean, just that's a song that will be around forever. You know, that's another great example of one. Like, you know, it's interesting the ones that you can feel like records or songs like, man, that one's going to stand the test of time. You know?
And it's interesting Break Up in the End is one of those songs.
Gosh, thank you for saying
that. I'm telling you, it's a great song. It will get, has it had a pop recut yet?
It hasn't, gosh. And that's what's funny with that song, speaking of that, because when we wrote that song was so funny because we finished that song that day and I thought, God, I don't know if I've ever been more proud of a song, and I bet no one is going to care.
Wow.
Like, I just was like, didn't know if my publishers, and no fault of theirs. It's just, and you know, it's like you get beat over the head with up tempo. We need tempo that you can sometimes. But anyway, like Dan and Shay they really wanted that song.
Really?
And, yes. And Dan Smyers to this day will still be like, it still bothers me that we never got to do that one. But Cole is an old friend and he had like heard it first. And I just love everything he did with it. I feel like I love his vocal performance. But you saying pop, I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if somebody like that was to just, you know, it's interesting.
Oh, I think it will. I think it'll get a big recut.
Oh my gosh. That makes me
knocking wood for you. I think you will.
Me too. Thanks, Chris.
I think you will. Now, your boyfriend, I didn't know this, is Ben Burgess. Is that right?
Yes. He's who came in my house a minute ago when I was waving.
I'm trying to get this straight because I think we heard you yelling for him because you were right behind us at the
We were. It was at NSAI. We were at the Ryman. Yes.
And y'all were right behind us and you were yelling.
Yes.
And we were trying to figure out.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I was thinking, well, maybe they write together or something, but that's your boyfriend. Okay.
Yes,
sorry,
it is.
I didn't know that.
And him and Kevin Kadish had performed whiskey, where we're doing Whiskey Glasses.
Your boyfriend is awesome.
Isn't he awesome?
Yes, he is. His whole deal. The songs are great. His performance was great. He's awesome.
He's like one of those people that, I don't know, you don't meet another Ben Burgess. I feel like there's only one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the whole thing. His wardrobe got a little bit of. Does he still have? There he is. Hey, man.
Go on.
Yeah.
He's coming to say hi.
Ah, okay.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys were awesome. It was NSAI at the Ryman.
Yes, sir. Good to see you
Yeah,
again.
good to see you, man. That's a talent family there. Look at y'all.
I know. We were talking about that today. Like, gosh, this is a great question. I want to ask you almost. How do you do that? You and Amy haven't been together so long.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was asking me earlier, like, does that ever get weird? Do you feel like in your relationship? And Hillary, Lindsay, and Carrie Barlow and I have talked about it before, and Jessie, Alexander, and JR.
Yep.
And it's definitely, what do you think about that?
Have
you guys had weird times?
Only in my mind.
I love that answer. You're like me.
Only in my mind.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
that was great.
I have definitely been Mr. Mayo. That's a joke around here.
Oh.
My kids will say, Mr. Mayo.
That is funny.
The thing is, yeah, it comes up. You know it comes up.
That's what I mean.
I'll tell you, give it a great example, and I think I'm not sure if you did or not, but Amy got a last-minute cut on the new McGraw record.
Yes, I got, which I was
which you did too, right? Don't you have something on there?
Which it was another one like hers. Thank you. Anybody would say this, but a total dream cut for me. But yeah, that's like you were saying about the McGraw though, because we've had that where we had it with a Jake Owen record. Like, I thought I was going to get a song on there, and then Ben Scott recorded the last minute, and I was like, this is hilarious. I wonder if your song knocked mine out.
Right.
But weirdly, now, if it wasn't infringing on real specific territory or something, I think I might feel weirder. But, like, I have yet to have a moment with him where I've gotten, like, straight up, like, jealous or mad. Because I don't know if you end up telling yourself this in your head too, but I'm like, hey, same house, like it's all going to the same place.
That's right. That's
and
exactly
Carrie Barlow has talked to me with Hillary in that way because, it's just like Carrie has hits and then Hillary wins Summer of the Year, and then it's these things, it's like you're just kind of, and then Chris and Morgan Stapleton even because everybody forgets Morgan had a record deal.
She sure did.
And I know we always just hear her harmonies a lot now at this point, but is an amazing just singer on her own. But they've like figured out what works for them. So it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I'll tell you a funny one we came up with. There's this old, there's an old saying called patriotism begins at home. You remember that? It's like from World War II. It's a saying. Yeah. Patriotism begins at home.
I do remember that.
Okay, so Zelda
Fitzgerald, yes.
Scott Fitzgerald was married to Zelda, who was a little bit nutty. And she had a famous quote. You'll love this. Her quote was, plagiarism begins at home.
It's so true. That is so funny.
That's what she said about Scott, is that plagiarism begins. So, because she was accusing that he was taking her ideas and putting them in books.
I have read a lot about them. The Great Gatsby is actually one of my favorite books of all time. And I became kind of fascinated by her as well and how she always, and then, what's funny is in as much esteem as I hold him, there are some, even in Gatsby alone, sorry, Scott, but I do kind of wonder if she said some of that stuff, because there's that line in Gatsby that I'm just like, there's no way a woman didn't say this, and maybe he just overheard it, or whatever. But that part where he says the main character Daisy's about to have a baby girl, and she's like, I hope she'll be a fool because that's the best thing a woman in this world can be. Yeah. And I just thought that was, I'm like, you have to be a woman to know how many things that means. It means so many things, and I always wonder that plagiarism begins at home. That's funny. Yeah. It's like, I wish we could know, but I guess we'll never know.
I've had songs, we were talking the other night, the song I wrote with Civil War is called Poison and Wine.
The best.
Three or four of those lines in there that I did in the verses, I took straight from a fight that Amy said.
Right.
Right out of her mouth.
Totally. And then you're like, and then that's funny.
Yeah.
As a writer, because you're like, where's the line there? Almost.
I know.
In meaning that it's our job as writers to have our antenna up, and you did, even in your fight.
Yeah, she screamed at me, you think your dreams are the same as mine. She screamed that at me.
Wow,
like an hour before the session.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's like so the beauty of it is it's like, I love that story. I love to know that's where that came from.
Yeah. We just had this barn burner fight. I'm sure y'all don't fight, but we do.
Oh, never. I'm completely sane and not irrational at all. Never drink too much.
Oh my God.
Dude, and speaking of that, this will make you laugh because I know you love the song too, but Tom Rowland, who I love, the journalist,
Sure.
when he interviewed me about Breakup in the End, this will make you laugh. He said, you know what I noticed about this song? None of us as writers had noticed it about it. He was like, I love that it begins and ends with alcohol. And I was like, doesn't it always, Tom? But I was like, I didn't notice that we'd done that. I think subconsciously, all three of us, things have began and ended that way. So we must have just gone there. But man, alcohol, hell of a drug. I guess.
Oh my God. We had them over and over. We would get in these giant fights. We'd wake up in the morning and I had booked this is pre-internet booking on airplanes. Okay,
oh,
so
yeah.
2002. I'd wake up hungover at noon and had made an airplane reservation to Montana.
Oh, yeah.
And have that all written down, which now I have to try to cancel.
This is so amazing.
Yeah, that was a joke. I'm leaving. I'm booking a flight. I'm out.
I know that's tight though. That's almost like a diffuser when you guys fight, probably.
Yeah.
I'm booking a flight.
But creative people are pretty fiery anyway.
Oh
right?
yeah. And sometimes I wonder, like, do we subconsciously sometimes like start shit, like just to like feel something that I don't know will make us go right the next, I can't make you love me. I don't know. And none of that being aware of it in the moment, but there have been times like, speaking of these fights, like Ben and I'll look back on a fight and be like, why did that even start? And I'm like, did you just want to feel passionate and fiery and like you're F. Scott and Zelda? You know what I mean? Like, what were you doing? It's funny.
Well, before I let you go, I want to ask one other thing.
Okay.
I have never asked about this, but I am curious. Do you make your own records? Is that something that's in your future?
You know,
as an artist?
I have never really had that bug. It's funny though, my friend Aaron Esais, who's a producer.
I know Aaron.
Okay, I was like, whenever we're drinking together, he'll be like, wait, can we just do it? Like, like even just an EP, because I have horrible stage fright. I'm not a great singer in my mind. And so I always have just been kind of like, I just want to be a writer. But then there are these moments that I think we all have as writers and have spurned a ton of big careers right now, like Old Dominion, Hardy, is you write these songs that no one's recording that you love. And you're like, well, shit, man, I want some people to hear this stuff. So I think about it sometimes. I don't know though. Even just the thought of it gives me a shit ton of respect for artists, because I just can't imagine that feeling really of putting something out into the world that, like, I don't know, we do that with songs, but like, it just feels that where it's just, you're the face of it. And it's like,
it's more anonymous. It's more anonymous with songs.
Which I like. And so I just can't imagine, anonymous is the exact word. Yeah. I just can't imagine like reading somebody being like, I hate this song and that bitch is ugly. You know what I mean? It's like Avenue Beat when they were talking about their F 2020 song and they were like, well, yeah, I mean, we just had all these people commenting on our page, like making fun of our appearance. And I'm just like, man, I am too much of a baby for that. That'd be rough.
Yeah, it's definitely and it seems tough. I mean, the travel, the whole radio tour thing seems difficult. At the same time, things are changing so much. You should definitely do some versions of your stuff and just put them out, you know?
I know. Like,
just let your fans, you know, there's people who love what you do.
Right.
Not, you know, maybe just let Aaron get you some cool recordings of your stuff and then, you know.
Right. Because it's like Luke Laird, like the other day, I thought that's so cool that he's just putting out songs right now that he's just always kind of loved.
Yeah.
And genuinely, obviously, not just being like, I just wanted to do this. I'm not trying to like get something out of it. And I think that's pretty awesome. So I definitely think about it. It would be cool to do.
we're waiting for that. That's gonna
Okay,
be
cool.
awesome.
I was like, maybe
I
we
don't think
can
I've
do
ever-
some. We should do
Yes.
some stuff for it, Chris.
Well, we will do some stuff for it.
Yes, let's do it.
Well, this has been awesome, man. I really thank you for doing this for us.
Thank you for doing it, inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've really done a few podcasts in this show I've been doing. I don't remember one that felt more like just a conversation.
Awesome.
A long time. I mean,
That's
I kind of
cool.
forgot.
That makes me happy then.
I forgot I was doing a podcast.
I kind of did too. Thank you so much for having
hey,
me.
thank you for being on the show for us. And I just, for everyone listening, check her out. She's a major talent, and you've got such killer things going on. Everybody,
Thank you.
you're a well-known brand at this point. But you are kicking ass, and just love you, and thank you for being on the show.
Love
today.
you too. Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
All right.
All
See you
right.
soon.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch List. To hear songs written and or recorded by today's guest, check out this week's playlist by finding us on Spotify at Pitch List Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or your preferred listening platform. And if you want, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review. For more exclusive content from this week's guest and more, you can visit our website at pitchlistpodcast.com or follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.